Welcome to episode 3. It's awesome. We got through 2 episodes, and I think we're on track for another awesome episode. TJ, share about what this episode's about.
So this one, last week we talked about top reasons why it's easier not to engage the parents in the family, and then also reasons why to engage them. And today we're going to really talk specifically about like just practical ways, kind of just, hey, what are some things that we've done, we've tried, and we're like, hey, it works.
Basically, the actual hands-on of doing it.
Yeah. So for all the ones that are like, hey, stop giving me theory, stop giving me clout, like high-level stuff. Give me the what are some things I can practically do?
Yep.
They're gonna love this episode.
Perfect. And I mean that theory is always great, but action is I think more difficult than theory. So I think it's great that we're doing this episode. What is one way that you have churned theory into actually doing it?
I think I will admit I am easily influenced by the things that other people would say. And I think one of the practical ways of engaging with the family is one of the best ways is being careful of the worst. Of being careful of just assuming the worst, by letting other people see, like the way that they talk about a kid, influencing the way that I then view that child, or even view that family. And so I think very practically for me. Go ahead.
Oh, no, just to clarify. So, like, if another leader's coming to you about an issue with a child, is that what you're saying is the influencing part?
Either that, or maybe it's another family in the ministry going, oh, man, I heard you got so-and-so.
Okay.
Like, and they're like, oh, they're a handful.
Almost the rumor mill, basically.
Right, and just it's so easily, then that would already put me guarded against the kid or against a child or a student in whatever circumstances. And so I think really practically a way like engaging the family is like just helping the parents see and believe that I am for them, I'm for their child, want them to succeed and want to help however we can to help that become a reality.
And not letting other people's views cloud our thought pattern about.
Yeah, because that's their experience, that's what they've seen, which may be true, but it may not be my reality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. That's perfect.
Yep.
So we're going to talk a little bit about language and how we engage on a language terms with parents. Tell me more about that.
So I think it's fundamental for the ways for parents to understand the way that you talk about their kid in any circumstance, whether the child has special needs or not. The way that you talk about their kid, the way that you see their child, and then also the language in this way that you talk to parents is incredibly fundamental, and it also goes back to like we talked about. I think one of the first 2 episodes was just the way that God sees them, and we want those things to be consistent. We don't want the way that God sees them to be different from ours. Like an example of this is so easy. I think I've heard. You can see it really practically if you use the example. So-and-so, like, I'll use me for an example. Okay, someone comes to my parents when I was younger, when I was in middle school. Horrible days. But if they would come and say, oh, TJ's a bad kid, versus TJ is a child that made a bad decision.
It's completely different philosophy behind that.
Yeah, because on the first one, you just labeled them as a bad kid. Then as that child, they can go, oh, I'm a bad kid, instead of I'm a child of God that is redeemed in Jesus can redeem
definitely
my bad decision
and made in the image of God too.
Yeah.
And on a mental health perspective, terms can kind of get sticky. I mean, you use terms like disability, special needs. There's different terms, and they can become offensive to different individuals, and everybody takes those terms differently. But one thing with the terms that we use is we want to make sure that we're engaging on terms that they are comfortable with. So I've talked to a lot of autism parents with their children have autism, and a lot of them, not all of them, but won't like you saying autistic children. They like the preference of my child has autism.
Yeah, because it's a clarifier. It's like a what is that, qualifier?
Yeah,
or whatever it is.
It's completely different ways of thinking about it. And it's just being careful of like using the terms that we are comfortable with as far as not offensive terms. If we're coming to someone and saying it's a bad child, we've already labeled that child in a very negative way, and we're not looking for solutions at this point.
Yeah, because then that's Because then you've already labeled them. You've already kind of. I think that's why the language and the ways that we talk about talk about children, talk to parents about their children is so incredibly fundamental, because it really impacts. I think from the beginning it can impact the relationship.
Oh,
if they
definitely.
look at that going, you don't even know my kid. You're calling them by not even like in a way that I don't appreciate. That's gonna be harder to engage the parent.
Yeah, and I mean, you only have so many engagements with each parent. I mean,
Yep.
I'm not sure exact numbers of students you have, but our meetings with parents are very limited. So
Yep.
if we're coming at and they're only hearing this, then they're not going to understand and be willing to work with you.
Yeah. Yep. I think one of the other practical ways that we can engage the family is share the wins. I think parents way too much are communicated to and communicated about when there's a negative reaction or negative experience. So that kind of gets this kind of, I think maybe this little PTSD type thing where it's like, oh, hey, if I get a phone call from the youth pastor, more than likely
It's only gonna be
because-
negative.
Right. Come pick your kid up. They did X. Versus them looking forward to the conversations going, oh, I like hearing from like James, or I like hearing from the youth pastor. I like hearing from their small group leader because they share with me, they are for me. They also share with me when good things are happening. I remember there was specifically a tangible way that this kind of played out. We had a student with autism, and we always wanted our kids, our students to be included. We never wanted them to be just in a separate small group or anything of that. And so he had a specific one-on-one buddy, and this one-on-one, there was a day I got done, I came out into our large group room, and then the buddy was sitting there, and I was just like, immediately I was like, what happened? And they said, no. I was like, where are they? They said, he's in their small group.
What a win right there.
Oh my gosh. I was like, this is what we wanted, for them to be experience this true sense of inclusion and belonging, and they are there as them, and his brothers are around him going, I'm glad you're here. They just accepted him for who he was. And so I think always looking for those opportunities to share the wins like that to parents, instead of oh, hey, they did such and such, or today was a handful, or today was a challenge. Now look for ways to share and over communicate the wins to the parents.
That's definitely important when we're communicating and wanting parents to be on our side, because
Yeah.
if they're seeing wins, they're going to play harder essentially for our team. So,
Because they're going to want those wins to continue to happen.
Yep.
It's just going, man, how can I appreciate their small group leader, or anything I can do and need, because they see the value in what has happened.
And that's just a huge win for the church overall. I mean, if we're seeing these small wins, those battles turn into a greater victory
Yep.
as a church whole body,
Yep.
Which is just awesome to view as a larger perspective.
Yep. So James, I'm curious, do you see any value in syncing up and having a consistent plan or skills that are being either taught or reinforced at home? Or is it kind of like, oh, hey, is it like kind of reinforcing? Do you see the value in the reinforcing, or do you more go, hey, let me just do my own thing and then?
So definitely, I mean, the more people that are on the same page, the more wins we're going to have. So from what I'm understanding your question to be is like, how do we create a plan that everybody can be on board with?
Yeah.
And so in ABA therapy, applied behavior analysis, we're working with parents, and you have to understand that like we only get, as a therapist with each child, I get like 3.5 hours in the morning with one, and then 3.5 hours in the afternoon with another. They're going to have some victories with that amount of time, but ultimately, if I'm sending that plan home with the parent and they're helping engage with that plan, coping strategy is a big one I think of when I'm thinking about plans. So how do we look at ways to cope with stressful situations? If I'm the only one teaching that in the classroom or in my setting, they may pick up on some of it,
Yeah.
but they're going to pick up so much more when their parents are reinforcing that. And so, like, I think we mentioned in the last episode, you get like close to maybe
Like 80 hours
80
or so
hours.
a year, that's if they come. Yeah.
So creating that plan with the parent is going to be essential, because that's how we're going to see victories.
Yeah.
And if everybody's on the same page, knowing what this plan is. So with the one-on-one buddy, I'm assuming that in this situation, we engaged with the parents, created a plan for the one-on-one buddy, and allow that into our church, so everybody's working on the same page.
And we even went another step further, and we even said, okay, do you know what their IEP or their plan is at school?
Which is an incredible way to do this.
And we were like, how are they handling like bringing in content? How are they handling transitions from rooms? I mean, we have a large group space that kids hang out in, and then we go into a room where we teach and worship and all that. And so how do they do on transitions, like from a classroom to a lunchroom? What's the plans? What are the things that they're doing? And so really finding this fully dynamic plan of what's being taught, what's being done at home, what's being done at school, and how can we as the church reinforce that? Because we don't want them to go and they go, wow, they go to youth group or they go to church and
Yeah.
they come home and I've got to do damage control because
Exactly.
like if they're like, hey, we're really working on no roughhousing.
So how did you bring that up to the parent as far as creating that or finding out about that plan and creating it for the church?
I think it was just trying to understand them of saying, hey, help me see things through your eyes. Help me see the world through the way that you see it, and then any kind of way that they could help speak into it. We would have parents or individuals, like with this one-on-one buddy, this organization came and they saw our programming happening, looking for people in the community that maybe are at autism centers or work with children with special needs on a regular basis, inviting them and having them come and saying, hey, can you look at our program and what we have going on? Can you look at that through the lens of a child with special needs? And oh my gosh, they were coming to me going, hey, like one tangible thing was, I remember I had a friend that came and did that. And she came and she said, TJ, everything you talk about is all audible. Everything, every instruction, all this stuff you were leaning, it's all audible. They said some children that may be having difficulty processing information like that, or also she's like, my kiddos with special needs are gonna need to see something written. So like when we did large group games, instead of me just saying the game, I would put the game up on the screen behind me so they could literally see and read the rules.
And everybody has a different learning style. I mean, it doesn't matter what extra challenges they have. Everybody's going to learn a little differently. So it's neat to see that they pointed this out specifically for that sensory need of that visual versus just the audio.
Yeah, so it was huge understanding the kids, understanding them better, being able to see how they experience different environments, like you were saying, of it, whether it's sensory or what are they going to experience that if you're playing loud music and the kid comes in, like they're, man, what in the world? So maybe it's having like noise canceling headphones available, what are those, whatever types of thing that may help them adjust. We've had kids come into our large group space that maybe doesn't handle transitions well. We had them come into our space first or later, had a seat saved for them and allowed them to come into our environment either before everybody so they could get comfortable or afterwards, so that they felt most, because then like everyone rushing in all at one time was really overload.
Yep,
and so we're like, hey, how can we best help them acclimate? And so a lot of that was engaging the parents and going, you know your kid best.
Yep.
Help us. How do they see things? How can we best help and serve you and your family? And I think another step further was even talking to parents and saying, hey, do you know what the plan is at school? I've actually had a family that I asked them saying, and they got me access to their school file. And so we were able to
looking at that.
Yeah, we were able to then better understand the student, because we had not only the conversation and partnership with the parents, but then we also had the plan that they experience in Indiana, 180 days a year.
Yeah.
We had both.
And if everybody's working on the same page, that's just incredible. Another example of this that I saw personally when you brought me in is there was visually impaired, and you just talk to the parent, what can we do to help? And it might even be increasing font size on some of your materials. But it's simple things, and parents do notice that. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, so it's asking, like in that situation, it was asking the mom, saying, hey, do you know, talk to me about this limitation. And she had said, she's like, he can't, it's difficult for him to see 5 feet in front of him. That like you and I, your face would be blurry. So I was like, okay, then that changes where we maybe have his seat. That changes what we get him. I mean, maybe it's a magnifying glass. It changes games. It changed games. It changed everything because we could then see, no pun intended, his environment through a little bit better lens.
That's just awesome. And you don't know these things unless you talk to the parents.
Right. If you don't
So-
engage the parents, you miss out on all of this. And so that's why it's so crazy. I think it's so fundamental and important to engage the parents in just some practical ways that you can maybe begin thinking and talking with parents. And so again, we would always, every week, every episode, we want you guys to have an action step to take this and go, how can I begin to apply it? This week, I would encourage, if you're watching or listening, begin having conversations with the parents. Last week, we're like, identify, pray for them, and begin to kind of show and tell them how you are for them. Begin having the conversations with them within the environments, maybe inviting them to say, hey, will you come check it out and help us see things of how we could best serve you and your family. And then just, again, it's understanding and loving on them. I mean,
And they'll notice. They'll
Yeah.
notice that.
yep.
And one point that I would like to bring home too is back to the language and how we see the kid. And there's a great quote by Mark Stricker, but he talks about seeing kids not as a problem to fix, but as a wonder to behold.
Yep.
And that's really meaningful to me. So the more we see them as a wonder to behold, the easier it's going to be to take these action steps of talking to their parents,
Yep.
and utilizing all of that's available to us, whether it's that school IEP
Yep.
or just simply increasing font sizes.
Yep.
So that's awesome.
Yep. Yeah. When he said that, I remember that training where our entire team was there. When he said that, all of us were like
Yeah.
writing down. Yeah.
Exact quote, so.
Yeah, it was great. So we want to again thank you guys for watching. Thank you for listening. Like the video, share it, comment. If you guys have any questions, send us any kind of message via Facebook or comment of ways that maybe we can pray for you, support you, encourage you, and continue conversations. If it's like, hey, I've got this again. By no means we reinforce, by no means are we looking and saying we're professionals. We just want you to know you're encouraged and you're not alone in these conversations.
Yep. Opening up that
Knowing-
conversation.
yeah, of how to minister to children and students with special needs, physical disabilities, behavioral or food allergies, or any of that stuff, because every single one of them is made in the image of God and deserves it. We want to be that. So again, thank you guys for watching. A little bit of teaser. I got to tell you, the next few episodes are ones that you will not want to miss. You want to share a
Definitely.
little about them?
Yeah, I'm excited. So there's reasons for behaviors, and we're going to go deep into those reasons of why a kid might be acting up. And we're going to give very practical solutions to each behavior type. Just as a quick teaser, one behavior type might be attention. And so how do we give positive attention to a kid who needs that? And these 4 episodes are going to look at very, very practical ways
Yep.
that we can use in our ministry. So I'm super excited
This
about
was
this.
awesome. This was a thing this past summer. I mean, as you and I were talking, you're like, well, what is there a reason? I'm like, I don't know.
Right.
This was huge for me as a youth worker and as a pastor. I got to see James in action and being able to see, because once you identified and you could understand what their motive was behind that behavior, then your action plan changed for
Completely.
each and every single one of them. And so you guys definitely will not want to miss the next few episodes.
excited. I'm definitely
pumped.
excited.
Yeah, I think there are going to be some screams we'll hear from all around the world, all around everybody listening when they just go, "Oh my gosh!" So again, thank you guys for watching. Like us, share it. Just thankful for you. Thank you for what you're doing and ministering into your churches and to your students. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you guys at the next episode.